Now, who knows Job? Is he in the Old Testament? Job, today's first reading. Is Job in the Old Testament or the New Testament? Old. Good job. I'd give you $1,000 if I had it. So Job's we see that he's in the Old Testament. And we see Job, the character of Job. It's really a test he's going through right now. We see one day God meets Satan. One day God meets Satan. And God says to Satan, look at my servant Job. Look at him. Isn't he righteous? Doesn't he do what's right in my eyes? And Satan says he only's doing what's right in your eyes because you're protecting him. You give me a chance with him and he'll curse you. And God says, okay, Satan, go do what you want, but you can't kill him. You can't kill him. And so Satan begins right away, and he begins with his family, with Job's family. First, we see the cows and the sheep and the goats that are all killed. We see that his property, his barns and his home is destroyed. And Job's wife says, in the Job, he starts getting pustules. And he starts getting all these different problems physically. And Job's wife says to Job, look at what's going on. Curse God, curse God. Job says, wife, you have to know what's happening here. You know, shall we curse God? Doesn't he make the rain fall on the good and the bad? You know, all people will die. Whether you're close to God or not, you're going to die. So why should I stay close to God? Okay, you can go that route if you want. If you want. Okay, and so we see Job being tested. It's a test. You know, and we see that Job, he even at the end is starting to banter with God, if you look at the end of that book. And Job is, you know, we see today he's getting frustrated. Isn't life a drudgery? All our days pass so quickly. And Job is complaining to the Lord at times. He's not cursing him, but he's saying, Lord, why is this happening to me? You know, and God tells Job, have you been at the bottom of the ocean, 300 feet down in the ocean? Have you ever interacted with the creatures at 300 feet down in the bottom of the ocean? Have you ever walked in the bottom of the ocean, Job? No. Were you there when I created the birds and the sky and the ceilings and the heavens? No. Job said no. Basically, God's saying, Job, I will do what I want. You aren't going to understand everything that I do. It isn't going to be according to your time period. Will you be faithful to me even when things don't operate according to your schedule? Job was being tested. Will you stay faithful or will you run? Will you allow yourself to be tested? To go through the refiner's fire as gold is tested and the impurities taken out? You know, Job's a good character. You know, we often have that common saying, the patience of Job, because he had to have a lot of patience. You know, in today's second reading, we see something different happening. We see in the Old Testament, you know, we see this life. You keep to the Jewish law. I love the Old Testament. I'm done with the Bible in a year, and I'm going through it a second time. Because I love that Jewish understanding. I love it. I love to hear that. I know this is how I understand who Jesus is and where he comes from. I love that. But I also am smart enough not to stay there. Okay? I'm smart enough to know where my bread is buttered. And Paul talks about that. Paul, in today's second reading, he says that, you and I have been baptized into Christ. Your life is not your own anymore. Your life is not your own. Well, I don't want to be taken over. Your life, you do not belong to yourself. You do no longer belong to yourself. It's not your agenda if you belong to Christ. It's not your agenda. You represent Jesus in the world. He's the King. He's the Lord. You represent Him. It's not about, as I told you many times, it's not about getting your name in the Dayton Daily News. It's not all about you. Okay? In the Army, they'll tell you. In the Air Force, Deacon Rusty will tell you. You don't get to do every job you want to do. The Army has many needs, and those needs need to be fulfilled. And you will do what's best for the Army, according to your talents. And isn't that the way with Jesus and His church? Okay? We all have many talents that have to be used for the glory and honor of God. It's all about Him. He's the one we represent. And it shows, if I do not preach the gospel, Paul says in the second reading, my life will end terribly. And that's just not for ordained people and nuns and deacons and brothers. It's for all of us. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. Woe, the woes. Woe to you. Because you do not belong to yourself. It's not about what other people think about you and whether that was the inappropriate time to talk about Jesus. As I'm watching the Cincinnati Bengals and eating Submarine sandwiches with my buddies. You can't talk about Jesus. This is a football game. Jesus is out of it. You're in the man cave now. You're in the man cave. We don't do that in the man cave. We don't talk about Jesus. Oh, yeah. He's the King. He supersedes the man cave, everybody. He's the Lord. And then in today's gospel, we see something happening. We're going from Old Testament to New Testament, and we're seeing all the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees that could not cast out demons in that world that they were living in. Jesus comes onto the scene and is respected as a rabbi, and he's casting out demons. He's curing the blind. He's healing the sick. He's gaining a hearing. Okay? Something new. New creation, new beginnings, resurrection. The light has come into the world. New beginnings, new creation, resurrection, new life. Jesus offers that. Jesus is not an old fogey. I know he lived 2,000 years ago. Many times we represent him and put him in the Old Testament. We think that he lived in the time of the Old Testament, but David and everybody else lived thousands of years before Jesus. Never think of Jesus as an Old Testament person. He's the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. He's just as new now as he was 2,000 years ago. And what did he tell his mom on the way to Calvary as he was taking up his cross? I make all things new. New beginnings, new creation, resurrection. New. With Jesus, everything's new. New life. The dead are raised. And this is what he offers. Not 2,000 years ago, but even now. Believe. Do not doubt, but believe. Do not be unbelieving, Thomas, but believe what I have to offer. And all your past experiences do not dictate the present moment. The life isn't dictated according to what I understand. And didn't Jesus teach us that? Didn't he show us the way? He will bewilder you. Is that uncomfortable for you? Do you have to be in control of everything in your environment? That's not the way with Jesus. You better be ready to be bewildered. He's going to send you chasing your tail. You aren't going to figure him out. You aren't going to put him in a box. This is your Messiah. This is your King. This is what he has to offer us. And he's given, and he's given, and he's given. He gives us his body and blood. You are getting your IV. You are getting your IV in the hospital or the church. You've heard his word. You're receiving his body and blood. And then you're called to go out there. You're getting your IV, and you need it on Sunday because you're going to run into a world. You're going to be running into the world that's not just structured and very communicative. And that, in many ways, that could be a demon itself. But you're going to be dealing with things that are even though you don't even see. You're going to be dealing with a realm of things you don't even see, good and bad. Some people tell me, Father, don't talk about Satan. Just talk about the love of Jesus. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to talk about Satan because he's your enemy. And if you don't know your enemy, you're in a world of hurt. And I got an AK-47, or here's my weapon. It's like an AK-47, everybody, 52 clips. 52 clips right here, the rosary. 52 clips. That's your weapon when you're fighting against evil. Mary came down from heaven to give this to us. She's not in competition with her son. She never has been. She's not in competition with her son. She works with her son. I have never seen anybody deal with addictions. Never seen them deal with it. Never saw people deal with addictions. You can go to the mental health counselor, and I'm okay with counseling. I refer people to psychologists. But if that's your go-to, if that's your end game, you're missing the whole package, everybody. I've never seen, and you can keep paying $100 for every session, but you will not deal with addictions. You will not deal with sexual lust. The most pure heart of Mary will help you keep your heart pure. You will not deal with it unless you pray. And I've never seen it done outside of the rosary. Yes, you could call me another Patrick Peyton, Father Patrick Peyton. The rosary's the key, everybody. Mary came down from heaven and gave it to us. And you know what? She said to pray the rosary every day. Not just one mystery, but to pray the whole rosary. It's the 3 mysteries. Sorrowful, joyful, okay, and glorious. Now we have the luminous. But to me, and I'm being honest, I get sidetracked at times too. I'm weak. I don't do it every day. Okay? But I know where my bread is buttered. I know what happens when I do. Okay? Mary came down and gave us this weapon. Like Frodo that was given that vial in the Lord of the Rings to keep that big spider away. This is your weapon to deal with evil. And when you pray the rosary, you're praying the Bible. Okay? You're meditating on the sorrowful. You're putting yourself in the sorrowful mysteries. Okay? And it's important that we do that. We are a people of prayer. You will not deal with evil, brothers and sisters, You will not lead the way of Christ if you do not pray. And that's just not on Sunday. It's every day. And Mary knew how hard that would be because she would bring a structured prayer to St. Dominic in the 1200s to show us how to do it. You got it? You get it? You going to do it? May God bless us from now and eternity. Amen.